Networking. Today we're going to talk about some of the different networking mechanisms that are available in VMware Server to connect a virtual machine to an external network. I'm going to go to the VM menu and I'm going to choose Settings. And if I click on Ethernet, a couple of options that you see, one is Bridge Networking, the other one is NAT. Bridge Networking connects a host directly to an external physical network. That VM is going to appear as a full-fledged host on an existing physical network. And the VM can then use any services available on that network, like printers, gateways, whatever other networking devices may exist out there. And in fact, my virtual machine here has full access to the external network, and I can browse to vmware.com if I need to out on the internet. I'm going to look at my network settings by going to Start, Run, Command. And my virtual machine is currently set to get a DHCP address, and it's getting one from the external network, which is serving out IP addresses in the range of 192.168.1, and I have the IP address of 109. I can see that my DNS servers are giving me external DNS servers through the network that I am connected to. So my virtual machine really looks like just any other physical machine on the network today. So now let's change the networking configuration from bridge networking to NAT. Go to the VM menu and choose Settings. And we're going to choose the Ethernet adapter. And we're going to change the network connection to NAT. And click OK. Now what I'll do is release and renew the IP address from the virtual machine. The IP address for the virtual machine is changed to 192.168.31.128. But wait a second, where did this IP address come from, and what is this default gateway? What happens is when we change to NAT only mode, the VMware server becomes our NAT server, and it's going to set up a network between the guest virtual machine and the host. We can see this network settings by clicking on Host and going to Virtual Network Settings and clicking on NAT. We can see that the NAT is using VMnet 8. That's the NAT network that's been set up by default by VMware Server. The gateway IP address is 192.168.31.2. If I click on DHCP, I can see that the DHCP network has been set up on VMnet 8, going to Properties and seeing that addresses 128 through 254 are what are going to be handed out to virtual machines that connect on this particular network. So in network translation, the virtual machines connect to an external network via the IP and MAC address that are used by the host computer, and then the host basically NATs between the VM and the host to transmit files. The VM again can transparently use files and can transparently access the external network and connect to things like printers and file servers and any network service that may be out there. So again, to review, the two different network modes that we talked about were bridge networking, where the virtual machine essentially connects directly to the physical network, is on the same network as the host machine is on, and NAT, where the host machine basically provides DHCP and NAT services to the virtual machine, and when you have a limited supply of globally routed IP addresses available, you can still use your virtual machine to access external services on the network, such as printers and any external network device. Today what we're going to look at is how to add a second network card to a virtual machine. So in order to do that, the virtual machine first has to be powered off. I'm going to click Edit Virtual Machine Settings, and I'm going to click the Add button to start the new hardware wizard. I'll click Next, and I'm going to choose an Ethernet adapter, and click Next again. Now usually it makes sense to add a second Ethernet adapter when you want to connect the virtual machine to a separate network But for today's demonstration, there's a feature that I want to test out in Windows XP, so I'm going to connect it to the same network. So I'm just going to go ahead and leave it selected as bridged and click Finish. And I'll click OK to close the Virtual Machine Settings dialog box. Next step would be to power on the virtual machine and get the virtual machine's guest operating system to recognize the fact that we have a second Ethernet adapter now. Well, that should be pretty easy with the VMware tools installed. So we'll log on to our virtual machine. We'll click on My Network Places and we'll go to Properties. Notice that the virtual machine actually sees two network connections here. And what I'm going to do with these two network connections is test out a little feature in Windows XP called Bridge Connections. So I'll bridge these two connections together and make them into one. And it'll take a couple of minutes for XP to figure it out. And now it shows the network bridge connected. And in fact, I can see that these are now one interface by looking at the command prompt and doing an ipconfig and seeing that the network bridge now has bridged the two network adapters together. Machine and how we can add hardware to the virtual machine, such as the new disk. So while the